Hi, I'm Ryan Isakainen, ETF strategist at First Trust. On this episode of the First Trust ROI Podcast, I'm joined by Jackie Wilke of the Advisor Consulting Group. In this episode, we're going to discuss how financial professionals can really focus on meeting the needs of female investors. We're going to talk about the next generation of wealth transfer and how financial professionals can help their clients along with that process. And we're going to talk about how Jackie's team works with financial professionals to make their business more efficient and more effective in helping clients. Thanks for joining us on the First Trust ROI Podcast. Jackie, thank you for joining us today on the ROI Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so this is going to air as our final podcast of 2023. We're heading into the new year. Do you have any New Year's resolutions that you've thought about?
Still working out the New Year's resolutions. I actually don't do resolutions so much as I try to pick like one word. That's my intention for the year.
Explain that.
So picking one word that you want to be your intention, whether it's consistency, it's personal growth, it's gratitude. So picking one thing to really practice throughout the whole year. So I haven't picked my word yet.
And that's what you focus on as kind of your mission. You reach the end of the year, and if you've done this, you're successful of your...
Yeah.
So what was your 2022 word of the year?
2023.
What was your 2023 word of the year?
2023 word of the year was balance.
Okay.
So having good balance between work, life, all that good stuff.
Okay. And have you succeeded, do you think?
It wasn't perfect, but I'd say overall it was good.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. You focus on something and then, you just, I think, probably tend to do it more. So even if you don't hit the mark exactly, you're
rather
at least moving in that direction.
Rather than a resolution, yeah. I found it works better for me.
That's a great idea. Okay, so you do quite a bit of traveling as you try to balance out your your busy life. You and I have spoken at the same conferences many times, not just this year, but in years past. And you work with the Advisor Consulting Group. When I think of what your group is responsible for, what you do at First Trust, you work a lot with financial professionals, helping them become more efficient, more productive. That's how I think of it when I think of your group. How would you describe what your group does?
Yeah, so the Advisor Consulting Group, for anyone listening who doesn't know about me or our team, we are 6 folks in-house at First Trust who are focused on helping advisors work on the business as they work in this business. My team is absolutely fantastic. Chris Jeppesen's the head of our team, and everyone has different areas of specialties, different areas of focus. So if someone's looking for some help, maybe it's navigating an obstacle, or they want to go after an opportunity, or they feel like they don't know what they don't know, they want to know what's working. Our team's a great resource for that. So we do a ton of speaking, we do coaching, consulting, and then we have a ton of resources too. So First Trust website, always go through your wholesaler to see what our team has. But yeah, write a blog for financial advisors too. So a little bit of everything.
How long have you been doing the blog?
Blog's been going on for about 5 years. Insights and innovations. Yeah, quick idea every single week for financial professionals who want to know what's working for someone else. Comes out pretty much every week. But yeah, if anybody listening wants to get access to that, we have it on the website, or your wholesaler can sign you up for it.
I have done, a newsletter and a blog and all these different writing projects, and I don't know how you do every week a new blog entry. Where do you get your ideas from?
From the conversations we have with advisors. So we're fortunate that we get to talk to elite professionals all day, every day. I like to say that we study success. That's really what my job is. So through those conversations, we get to just hear it. We get insight and access to those ideas. Then we just get to share them.
You mentioned there's 6 of you. Each member of the team has a different sort of specialty. And so what is your specialty on that team?
The areas that I focus on the most are where are advisors at today and where do they need to be. It's kind of that analogy of skate to where the puck is going. So how do they think towards the future and what they need to be focusing on. So 3 demographics that I spend a lot of time working on, whether it's through client experience, marketing, communication, are women investors, new generations of rising wealth holders, and clients' multi-generational families.
I want to dig into a lot of those, I don't know, some of your expertise. Probably won't have time to get through all of them, but so What are some of the nuances that women investors, as you're talking to financial professionals and helping to serve women investors, what are some of the nuances or some of the specifics that are important topics to talk about?
So McKinsey & Company estimates that by 2030, women will influence over $30 trillion.
Wow.
And I say if you look at the numbers that came off this summer from Beyonce, Taylor Swift, and Barbie, that influence is already here. And in the same study, they also found that women investors value the financial professionals so much so that she's willing to pay a premium. So one of the questions that I get often is, do women have a gender preference on their advisor? Well, women are half the population. So when you have that big of a group, when you have that big of a group, it's going to be very individual as far as their preferences go. Mm-hmm. And whenever we are on the road presenting, I always ask the audience to raise their hand if they can think of one female client who is an advocate for them, referrals, introductions, they have all of her assets. Everyone raises their hand. So it's more about the relationship, the connection, the needs that they have and their priorities and preferences.
So do you think that women tend to be, more better natural advocates for the advisor that they have a relationship with? Is that obviously it doesn't carry across, but is that a tendency that you see?
Women and younger generations have a higher propensity for sharing something that worked for them that they think would help someone else. Whether that's article, a piece of clothing, a workout that they really liked, they have a higher propensity for sharing that information. So the same goes for financial professionals.
That's interesting. Okay, so the other area that you mentioned, or one of the other areas, was really that next generation of investors. What at a high level, can you define who that group is?
At a high level, no. There's some specifics and layers to what we've labeled as next gen. Initially, next gen was synonymous with millennial, but that's also a very huge population. So for financial professionals, it's really two groups that they're focusing on. Their clients next gen, those who will be inheriting wealth, they're building wealth, those that they want to keep in the business so that they don't have that high risk of asset attrition that comes with a wealth transfer. And that kid, that next gen, could be 65 years old. Clients that are 70, 80, 90, the next gen's not a 20-year-old. So it could be defined by the clients' rising generations or younger investors who are building wealth and inheriting wealth that financial professionals frankly need in their business. If they're thinking about succession, you are not going to get a great value if you have a book of 80-year-old clients. But also, even if your clients aren't quite that high in age, they might be in the RMD phases, so they're spending down. So backfilling with younger generations of affluent individuals not only benefits their business today with new client acquisition, but also so many benefits in the future of their business.
So when you think about the different financial professionals and teams that you're working with, are there some common misunderstandings or assumptions that people have when it comes to the next generation of investors? I think you mentioned one that, I was thinking next generation is a 30-year-old. You said 60-year-old. And that makes sense. So what are some of those?
One that we often hear is that everyone has these clients that they don't want the kids to know about the money. They're worried about them being spoiled, entitled. Maybe they saw something bad happen to other families like them. So in those situations, one of the misconceptions is, well, the clients don't want us to talk to the kids, so we're not going to try. So that's where we go wrong. You need to know that next generation ahead of a wealth transfer, because if someone is in their 60s, they receive an inheritance. On top of that, they're dealing with loss, estate, maybe some complicated family dynamics. And that's when you're calling them to say, hey, we were your parents' financial professionals. This is who we are, what we do, how we do it. Well, one, that kind of feels like, hey, we care about you now that you have the money. And the other risk is that they could already have a financial professional that they work with. Actually, the third risk is that they're the ones who are going to cash a check and go buy a boat the minute that inheritance comes through, which that's not a good fit for the financial professional in most cases. So that's one of the misconceptions. The other is that young people don't have money. So it's really interesting in today's environment how young people are building wealth in different ways. So you have these younger individuals who worked in tech. They were founders and sold their company, or they just are high earners now. And so looking at that younger generation, don't assume that they don't have any money. There's a lot of, there is a financial professional recently. I asked, who's one of your higher net worth clients that you brought on under 40 years old? He said he brought on 2 clients over the last couple of months, under 40 years old, both 7-figure plus accounts that they brought on. So not assuming that younger generations don't have wealth, because they do, and understanding what they value and how it's different from previous generations to make sure what you do is going to be relevant for that.
You talked a little bit about sort of the next generation transfer of wealth. What are some of the the advice, some of the pieces of advice that you give that tends to be most helpful, that resonates the most? What are some ways that people can think about tailoring their practice towards those groups?
So to engage with not just the family capital, but the human capital within the individuals, the more personal you can get, the better. And it doesn't have to be personal from the standpoint of, every intimate detail about them. But let's say, being from Chicago, Bears are our team here. We did win, but it's not always great. But even knowing what their favorite sports team is, and on Sunday sending them a message, hey, was thinking of you, congrats on the win, hope everything's going well. So that kind of unexpected touch point where you show them how well you know them, that's going to create a bond where you don't necessarily look like, oh, you're just my parents' financial professional. You're actually someone that I have a connection with too. So that's one of the things that we highly recommend. Find out as much as you can about them, collect the data, and then use it to build those relationships. Connect with them early and often, again, ahead of any risk of wealth transfer. And the third thing is to be a resource. So one of the processes that we have that I do the most coaching on here is called the family phone call. So this process was designed by a team in California. And the goal of it is for the financial professional to meet the people important to clients. And we use that language specifically, those important to clients, because that could be nieces and nephews, it could be best friends, and then you have opportunity for growth horizontally in the family tree and up the family tree. So when you're emailing your client saying, hey, we have this new resource, it's called the family phone call, a lot of clients are finding value in it, we want you to know that you and your family, you and those most important to you have access to this, that you could prompt them, like if they are that 40-year-old client, well, what about your siblings, your in-laws, maybe even your parents? That's who should be on this call. And in the process, when you position this to clients, you're really giving them a resource. So you're not reaching out to them saying, hey, we want to meet the people important to you. You're saying, gosh, a lot of clients are finding value in it. This is a way for us to get to know them. So if they need anything, they have access to expertise instead of the internet or their friends who don't know anything, which clients would like to avoid. Not the best places to build good stewardship of wealth and financial literacy. So the third part of it is you introduce it to clients. You have the family phone call, which is 10 minutes, by the way. So this is scalable. Short and sweet. It's an introduction. Financial professionals share their story. And then the follow-on is the next step. So what a lot of professionals will offer is, hey, if you ever need us, you want a second opinion, a sounding board, you don't know what you don't know, we're always happy to set up a 20-minute Ask Anything session.
So you gave 3 different examples there. And the family phone call, that maybe some investment advice enters into that. Maybe there's a question from the family about something to do with investments. But the other parts, they don't really seem to do, they seem transferable to other, professions, jobs. It's just building a relationship with people.
And that's a big evolution in our industry, is the relationship side of things. It's more important than ever because investors have options, especially younger investors. They don't need a financial professional to give them access to the market. They can get that on their phone. So what else do you do? So a lot of it is expanding to financial planning, other areas of management like tax, estate, bringing in behavioral sides of things. So behavioral finance, whether that's coaching, education. So layering in to expand your value by putting more resources and services behind what you offer.
I want to circle back to the family phone call because I think that's a topic that it just, again, listening to it, it resonates with me that that's something that would be really a helpful way to build relationships throughout, not just the parents and the child, but maybe even horizontally in generations as well. So is there a sort of best practice way to set that up, or what's the language that people would use in sort of recommending or offering that as a service?
Great question. Good news is we have it all in scripts.
Oh, perfect.
So it's a very comprehensive process. We have the intro email script. We've got a timeline for setting up the call. We've got an intro or a sample script for the call itself. And then the financial professional decides what the next step is, a 20-minute Ask Anything session, or maybe it's a free financial plan if the loved one is a sibling who lives in Chicago and has a business. You're going to want to go a little deeper with them right off the bat, but very comprehensive. So for anyone listening, if you want to check that out, just talk to your First Trust wholesaler.
Are there any, I don't know, as you think about stories and people that you've worked with in the last year, are there any stories that you'd be willing to share with us of, kind of how you've worked with a team and maybe some of the results that have come, some of the problems that you've helped them work through? Any stories you could share with us?
Sure. So I always joke that the best idea that I'm going to give you is the one you actually implement. So a lot of it is what action comes behind a coaching call or a great idea that's shared. There's so many great stories of success that come out of the work that we do with financial professionals, not because we're great, but because they're great and they are constant learners and love to grow. So I'll share a story about the family phone call since we were on that topic.
Sure.
Around this time last year, one of the teams that we work with in Connecticut sent out that sample email template, copy paste, ran it through compliance, sent it to their top 10 clients. One of the clients reached out and said, hey, I really want to set this up with my daughter and son-in-law. My son-in-law is coming into an inheritance from his grandparents. I don't know how much, and my 40-something daughter and son-in-law, it's not my place to tell them what to do with their money. But yeah, I want to make sure that they're talking to the experts. So team in Connecticut, husband and wife, the clients, daughter and son-in-law, they get on the 10-minute family phone call. Goes great. Team in Connecticut just introduces themselves, say, hey, we know you might be experiencing a wealth event. If you ever want to talk, we're happy to set up a 20-minute Ask Anything session. So fast forward, daughter and son-in-law took them up on that one-on-one 20-minute session and turned into a robust conversation and discovery, and they onboarded a 7-figure account from the inheritance of the son-in-law. So what they did there was new client acquisition, awesome. Now they've also locked in one of their biggest clients' daughter and son-in-law. So they're going to work with those kids for a very long time before wealth is transferred, and they don't have to worry about that risk of them going anywhere that they don't want them to be.
Interesting. Another topic that I think, I'm not sure if it's misunderstood or not, but one of the things is, as I talk to financial professionals, I'll sometimes hear them refer to sort of the next generation of investors as having a whole different set of values in comparison to maybe the current biggest wealth holders. Do you find that to be the case? Is there really a big, demographic shift in values from an investor standpoint? Obviously, ESG has been something that people have talked a lot about, but what's your take on that? So
these statistics and studies are helpful, but again, we're trying to get perspective on a generation. So that's going to be very individualized once you actually get down to meeting a prospect or working with a client. So the biggest thing that we can do is have deep discovery and then deliver as much personalization as possible. But one of the misconceptions is often they don't have any money, or all they're going to do is try to get me to play stock trades. Well, no, a lot of them value having a relationship. So a Fidelity study found that of the Gen Y and Gen Z that they surveyed, 85% would prefer some sort of behavioral coaching compared to 25% of baby boomers. So what does that look like? That's a conversation that we can have with an individual or a team. But just knowing that, that's interesting, right? That's good data as you build out your client experience, as you build out your marketing, education, events, whatever you're working on, knowing that, gosh, maybe they do value more of that hand-holding where they're the hero And as the financial professional, you're the guide. You're the co-creator. You're the advisor. You're not just one thing to them. You're so much more, if not all things to them.
Okay, that makes sense. And you find that to be a little bit more true, at least in the statistics that you referenced, for the generation coming up. So is the older generation, I guess, the business model more focused on making recommendations than it is the younger model?
Yeah, if you think about older generations, how they've engaged with an advisor, so they probably started with a stockbroker, then it evolved to having an investment manager. So that was product oriented. And now we're in this new wave of financial planning. You're bringing in more of their loved ones. It's more of a holistic approach. So in this next phase, that's why you see younger generations valuing it. And the reason that it's evolved that way is because everything's become commoditized and democratized.
That makes sense.
On the things that used to be a value add from a financial professional, now anyone can get access to that. So we have to evolve along with that.
Okay, I want to ask you a little bit more about, speaking of values, sort of the ESG side of values. Is it true that the younger generation cares more about those sorts of issues, at least in the, your interaction with that demographic or studies that you've read?
So statistically, younger generations would have a preference towards ESG. That's what studies were saying a couple of years ago, that they had a very strong preference towards it. But now I don't know that that's as strong.
Okay.
So what a lot of financial professionals will do is they'll just ask their clients, hey, for some of our younger clients, ESG is important, where we align impact with the portfolio. Is that something that's important to you? And let them answer, because they might have heard this term ESG and they have no idea what it actually means.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people for that.
Yeah,
that's
focusing
true.
it more on aligning what's important to you, aligning your values with how we're allocating your assets. That's what you want to get to. So not labeling it ESG, because I've had so many advisors ask a client, is ESG important to you? And they're like, no. So you don't want to assume that it is if it's not. And if it is, you should know that. But positioning it more as aligning values with how we're allocating those assets, that's going to give you more information. Are their values tied to something that's religious based? Is it something that's just important to them? Are there things they don't want to be invested in? Which I know that you've talked about some of our new resources and products that we have, which make it a lot easier for financial professionals to do that. But yeah, ESG, not something that is as big of a conversation as it was several years ago. Part
of what I heard you say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that maybe some of these values that you're putting into investments are more relevant for the younger generation, but they're not all the same.
Right.
And I think the assumption is that a younger generation is going to have this set of values, but they can be different. I mean, people are different, right?
Yes.
And so you can customize portfolios by asking and finding out, doing that discovery, and understanding what somebody's value orientation is inside of their portfolio.
Yeah, and part of asking that values question could even be, okay, I want to retire at 65, and then the follow-up question is, well, why? Can you tell me a little more about what that looks like? And you might find out that it's because they want to spend half the year traveling and they want to spend the other half of the year with the grandkids, which also can build deeper relationships, knowing what's really important to them and using it not just in what you're doing behind the scenes, but in how you communicate with them. The content that you're sharing, education you're delivering, and what you're talking about to deliver more of that personalization.
You've been at First Trust for some time now, and you've had opportunities to work in different areas, and you've ended up working for the Advisor Consulting Group. So what drew you to that side of the business at First Trust? So
it's kind of a funny story how, life happens, and you look back and you're like, it usually always works out the way it's supposed to. So growing up, both my parents worked in the financial services industry, and my mom for a little bit did practice management. So I always knew what this role was. And when I started in wholesaling, that was fantastic, did that for 4 years, but I kept finding myself drawn to this side of the business, talking about client engagement, communication, growth, marketing, what innovations do they need to be thinking about. I just found myself being drawn to it. So about 10 years ago, Chris Jepson gave me the opportunity to join his team, and the rest is history. Yeah, I love these conversations and the work we get to do with our advisors.
Yeah, that's great. And you've done quite a bit of travel, giving speeches in different places. Any favorite places that you like to go? I don't want to, people listening, they're going to be like, wait, she didn't say my state. But what's maybe in the last year or so, any favorites?
I get asked this a lot. One that was really cool, I went down to Mexico City with our LATAM team. Love Mexico City. That's a really cool place. U.S., I'm a little partial to New York because one of my sisters lives there.
Okay.
So when I get to see her during a work trip, that's always a plus.
Okay. All right, let me go back to Mexico City because I've been there and I think it's fantastic.
It's awesome.
What did you like about Mexico City?
I love the culture.
Yeah.
The food is amazing. The history is so interesting. The architecture is beautiful. These little nooks, like the little neighborhoods are fantastic. I love Mexico City.
The first time I went to Mexico City, I was surprised at how good the food was. I knew, I knew I liked
phenomenal.
Mexican food in general, but I mean, just really good foodie food, elevated cuisine. It was just so good.
They've got some Michelin stars down there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So fantastic. And obviously, I guess based on that comment, you understand what I like, going places that have good food. In New York, I mean, fantastic restaurants there as well. Okay, so as you kind of travel around, I don't know if you're like me, I kind of spend time sometimes reading books, but I listen to a lot of audiobooks and kind of go back and forth. But as you read and kind of, I don't know, spend a lot of time on planes, so you probably have some time to read. Are there any books that are on the Jackie Wilke reading list or anything that you've read recently that you'd recommend our audience check out?
Yes. So the book that I'm reading right now is called Wealth 3.0. They don't have it on audio, unfortunately, because I'm also an audiobook girl. But this book is so interesting. It's about helping financial professionals serve families differently.
Okay.
So not just serving the family capital, the money, but also serving more of the dynamics, the people, the things that are important to them, and helping families build more sustainability. You've probably heard the phrase shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. So what are ways that financial professionals can be involved in not just making that less of a risk, but really helping a family thrive together?
What's the 3.0 indicate?
So they break down...
Is that the 3 generations? Is that...
No,
okay.
The 3 evolutions of wealth management. So they start with Wealth 1.0, explain what that is, Wealth 2.0, and now this new evolution or turning point is going into Wealth 3.0.
So this is the next level of, okay, my final question for you. As you think about, as you travel around, as you talk to people, there's a lot to be negative about. Sometimes people fall into kind of just pessimism. And I want to know what makes you optimistic as you think about, 2024 is just around the corner.
What makes me optimistic is the power of human to human in our industry specifically.
Okay.
So with AI, with technology, things are evolving and changing. But if someone values the financial professional, it's because they want their person, the person they like, the person they trust, the person that will respond to their emails, and they know it's a real person, not a robot behind them. I heard this analogy that you go to the doctor and AI might analyze everything and give a diagnosis or a prognosis, but who do you want to tell you what that is and what the next steps look like? Do you want a human or do you want an iPad? And people will still want a human. So I'm really optimistic about the opportunity in the human-to-human side of our industry, powered by technology. So leveraging the benefits of both.
So it's not some sort of either or, like all the financial advisor jobs are going to be displaced by AI or an interesting algorithm or something like that. Some might, but there's an opportunity to thrive if you've got that human contact, that human relationship that can help you meet the needs of your clients. Ultimately.
The elite teams that we're working with, they have this down. All of them lead with financial planning. They're consistently communicating with their clients. They have those experiences built in that we sometimes call surprise and delight. They know the loved ones. They know who's important to them. They're bridging into those relationships. So a lot of that has to do with more the human side than it does the things that power them to get there. Like I always joke with advisors, like, you have some clients who do, but how many of your clients really care how the watch is made? Mm-hmm. Probably not too many. They trust you to do it, but they want to know that it was custom built for them.
When you think about some of the elite teams that you mentioned, and this is maybe I'm asking for a guess on your part, but if you think about the pie of their success, what percentage do you think comes from maybe the right investment product versus the solutions that you're talking about and the relationships that they have with the client, the services part of that?
So it's both. Because if someone gives you money and you lose it all, they're not coming back. Sure. They can't come back. So it's more about what's the client-facing communication or the prospect-facing communication versus what's going to be working behind the scenes. So you have to have both. The formula that we usually follow is who and why powered by what and how. So let's say you want to talk about a new solution for your clients. When you bring it to them, you're not just going to say, hey, I think this is good for you. You're going to say, I think this is good for you because I know market volatility is something that's keeping you up at night right now. This is going to be a solution for that because of ABC reasons.
Well, Jackie, thank you once again for joining us on the ROI Podcast. We'll have to have you back again sometime, maybe next year.
Anytime.
It's great conversation. Thanks to all of you for joining us as well on the ROI Podcast. We will see you next time.